and that we need to work together. What's in your best interest is in my best interest. What's in this country's best interest is in the United States' best interest. What's in nature's best interest is in my best interest, because I'm a part of nature. So the level of consciousness of interconnection is not strong enough in our world, in the collective consciousness. Spirituality is that revelation, is that understanding that we're all interconnected.
Welcome back to our show, Empower Your Life. I'm your host, Cindy Marie. Our next guest, he's been a transformational hypnotherapist and spiritual coach for over 20 years. He's also been a member of Spiritual Mystery School since 2006 and teaches spiritual awakening processing with his spiritual blooming classes. There's a lot of spiritual there. He specializes clients in helping releasing anxiety and also discover the true nature of we can feel calm, optimistic, and empowered to face challenges head on and build lives that we all freely can enjoy. That into tapping our higher self, which we're going to cover on this episode with our next guest, Michael Rosenbaum. Hi, Michael.
Hi, thank you.
I pronounced the last name correct, yes?
You got it. Rosenbaum, yes, that was pretty good.
Awesome. So, Michael, I'm a great believer that in a lot of transitional points in our lives, we have an incredible story to share. And I'm pretty sure not myself only, but also our viewers and listeners so curious to learn about your story in related to tapping into your higher self. So share with us your story.
Sure. Okay. So I would say my story goes back to when I first started meditating. I'm a big meditator. I've been meditating for over 40 years. And It's gone through a lot of different permutations.
I'm sure.
So there's many different ways to meditate. But when I began to meditate, I would say what really started me on this particular spiritual journey was an experience I had when I was meditating. So I was studying, I lived in New York City at the time, and I was studying with somebody I'd heard on a radio show who was from India, and he was teaching sound healing of some sort. And that perked my attention. So I went to see him, both in his groups and also privately. And he began to teach me his meditation process. Now, I'd already been meditating, but he had a particular meditation process that had a lot of ritual in it. I'm not really a ritual person, but I figured, well, if I'm studying with this person, I should follow what they say. So
be open.
Be open to that, And so he would have me getting up at dawn. And the ritual included, if I can remember back, ringing some bells, lighting a candle, burning some incense, rubbing some sandalwood. There's a bunch of little things. And then he had a particular meditation process, which frankly, I don't even remember now. But at the time I was doing it, and it was nice. I mean, I felt relaxed and nothing earth-shaking, but, you have to be patient. And so I was following the process, doing this for a couple of months. And one morning, I heard a voice in my mind. Wow. Now, it wasn't like an outside voice. It was thoughts in my mind, but they weren't my thoughts. I wasn't thinking about anything, or I wasn't thinking about that. And so I hear these thoughts, and the thoughts say, why don't you try this for your meditation this morning? And I'm thinking, what the heck was that? But he piqued my curiosity. What?
And hearing a strange voice coming somewhere and then asking you to do a different meditation. Okay,
that's right. I'm like, okay, that's pretty weird. It was a friendly voice. I mean, it didn't feel bad or anything, but it was just, it's like, where'd that come from? Yeah. And so here's what I do remember the meditation. It was simple. It was simple as can be. And meanwhile, I've been doing this kind of ritualistic, complicated process, right? which my ego was, very proud of. That was a big thing, right? Anyway, the message was, imagine putting your attention in the center of the earth. Imagine there's a line of light that comes up from the center of the earth, moves through your body out the top of your head into space. That was the meditation. That was it. And I thought to myself, boy, that's really simple, simple in a negative way. Right? That's really nothing, right? Anyway, but if I heard this clearly, I'll give it a try and then I'll go do what I normally do. That was how I thought. But I went and I did this process and I had this blast of energy move through my whole body like I'd never felt before. And that caught my attention. And I said, wow, what the heck was that?
Could you share with us if you can describe how did you feel? Like, so we can recall the scenario.
Yeah, let me see if I can remember. So it was a kind of an electric feeling. And you know how you get goosebumps sometimes, you respond to something. So it had a tactile feel like that. And there was a feeling of kind of like an opening of some sort. That's the way it felt to me. But it felt really delicious, and it felt really nice. My whole body really liked it. It vibrated with it. So after that experience, I couldn't go back to the old way of meditating.
Wow. Because
it seemed, why? Because this is like much better.
Yeah.
Then so I did that. I would do that. I'd sit in that energy for not a long time, probably 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
A couple of days later, the voice comes back again.
Oh, wow.
And it says, why don't you try this? And it gives me something new to do. I said, okay, what do you want me to try now? And I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something to the effect of light coming into my heart and going out in all directions, something like that. And again, I had this really deep experience. So I'm like, this is pretty cool, and I don't know where it's leading me, but it feels good. Yeah. So I mentioned it to my wife, what happened. And she says, well, I wonder if whoever this voice is, I wonder if you could ask a question. Now, that never occurred to me.
Yeah. Well, we are women. We are so curious with everything, right?
I guess it was a great idea. Anyway,
yeah.
I said, okay, I don't know what'll happen. So I don't remember what the question was, but I went in, I did the meditation, and I asked a question. I immediately got an answer. More thoughts in my mind. And it was an interesting answer. So I was really happy with that. So I started doing that. Then I realized that I would get like a short answer kind of thing. And then I wanted to retain it. So I thought maybe I should write it down. And when I started writing it down, I actually got more information. So somehow the act of writing it down brought more of that through to my consciousness. So I started a little journal and I started writing down answers to questions I had and started thinking about questions. And a couple of weeks later, my wife says, I wonder if you can ask a question for me. I said,
of course.
I don't know.
Why not? Maybe
Why
try.
not, right? What's your question? So I do that. I get an answer.
How does the answer, like, I'm so curious because could you remember how's the sound like of the voice? Is it like?
Well, it was, I remember it was telepathic. So it was thoughts. There wasn't an actual outer sound to it, but it had it was a male voice that I could tell. It was gentle and, clear. It wasn't wishy-washy. It was like,
yeah.
But it wasn't demanding in any way. It was just, here's the answer, here's an answer, And And when I would when I'd hear the answer, I'd feel those same kind of goosebumps, that same energy feeling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that had that signature to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I knew wasn't just words, but it had an energy component to it that I could experience. And that would tell me I'm connected in with this being, whoever it was, whatever it was. Right.
But how did you figure out that it's something beyond? Like, how do you even recognize? I mean, I know that you have been doing meditation. I guess you have already that kind of thought.
I didn't know it was something beyond. I didn't know what it was.
So how did you
I just
figure
knew
out?
that it opened my energy field opened up.
Uh-huh.
And I felt great and different in a good way, in a kind of expanded way. But this was new to me, so I didn't have any idea about exactly what I mean. I accepted it.
Yeah.
I mean, I allowed for it. I didn't question who are you? You know, I didn't have that response. It was just I felt blessed. Well, this is fun. I felt like it was fun.
Yeah.
That was just my whole take on it. But then I would say about a month later, my wife, I get me, you know, she's chatting with her friends or whatever, and she says, "Oh, you know, do you think I could invite one of my friends in and you could get some answers for her?" And I said, now I started to get a little worried because am I going to be responsible for what it comes out of my mouth? So I said, well, you can do that, but the person has to understand that they have to have their own discernment. They don't like what I say, just throw it out, please. But if it resonates and you get some value out of it, great, you know.
Yeah.
So I started doing that for some of her friends. You know, occasionally we would do that.
Yeah.
And but then so as I say, this is the beginning of my journey, right? So something new was happening, had opened up in me, but I wasn't sure what it was or what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I happened to meet a couple, a man and a woman, and I was maybe in my meditation circles. I don't know how. I don't remember how I met them originally. Maybe they had an event and I went to it. But we became kind of friends. And I mentioned to them what was happening to me, that I was hearing these messages. And they said, really? We do too. I said, wow, I'd never met anybody else who so an idea came to me that says, why don't we meditate together and get messages for each other? Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, let's do that. So once a week, I would go over to their house and we'd meditate for an hour or whatever. And we'd wait for messages and then we'd just voice them for each other. We'd get messages for each other. And what I noticed when in that setting, so it was even stronger in that setting, in a group. And remember, we were all connecting in that way. So somehow it ramped up the energy for me. And I would get really hot. My body would get hot from the inside out. And my hands would get really hot. And pleasant, it was very pleasant. Just warm, really nice feeling, but it's very noticeable. So I mentioned that to my friend. You know, I'm having this experience where my body gets really hot. Does that happen for you? She looks at me and she says, oh, maybe you should look into energy healing. And I said, what's that? I'd never heard of that. Now, this is back in the 80s. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time.
There wasn't Reiki. There wasn't stuff around like that I knew of.
Yeah.
That was a totally new concept. She says, oh, okay, well, I'm going to recommend a book. Why don't you read this book? It's from an energy healer and see what you think of it. And the book was called Hands of Light. And it was from a woman, her name was Barbara Brennan. And she was a healer. She's an energy healer, apparently a very prominent energy healer in New York, in Long Island, New York. So not far from me. So I get the book, big book, and I start reading it. And I'm totally blown away with what this woman talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And she's so clear, and she has such a beautiful way about her. She has a science background. She used to work for NASA, I think.
Wow.
So she has that kind of mindset. So she writes in a very clear way,
Yeah.
and about her process, about energy healing and the chakras and the 7 layers of the energy field, and how to heal on those different layers, and how to measure them, and on and on and on and on. Purpose of life, as far as she understands it. So I read that book and I thought, wow, if I can do 20% of what she's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I would be thrilled.
Yeah.
So I investigated, and I found out she had a school
Mm-hmm.
where she taught that. But it wasn't like a weekend class. It was a 4-year school.
Wow.
That
Literally school.
was a real school.
Yeah.
But what she did do was she taught weekends, introductory weekends that you could take to get a feel for whether you liked her process and whether you wanted to go on and study at her school. So I took one of her weekends, and I really liked it.
Mm.
So I decided I would enroll for that class. It wasn't cheap; it was expensive,
Mm-hmm.
especially, I'm trying to
During
think
that time.
especially at that time. So this is back in the 80s, right? And it was around $5,000 for the year.
Yeah. God.
1 year, it's 4-year program.
Mm-hmm.
And the program was you would meet. She had a place she taught in Long Island, which was drivable for me. It wasn't a short drive; it was about an hour or so. And she'd do like a 5-day retreat, 6 times a year. And in between the time, you had to study from her book and do the homework assignments and start doing some of these processes and write them up and bring them to the school. And, it's part of your curriculum.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, she had taught us, whatever she taught that year, you had to demonstrate to her teachers that you could do the curriculum for the year. And you could do the healing part, you could do whatever it was that she taught. Otherwise, you couldn't move to year 2.
Oh, wow.
You had to repeat it. So I like the integrity of that,
Yeah.
And but anyway, but that was a big challenge for me, because I wasn't in this field.
Yeah.
Actually, my job, I was in advertising. I was an art director in
Very
advertising. I worked at a big ad agency. I loved the job. It's fun. But I felt the calling. I wanted to do something else. So after I had this meditation experience and everything, I felt like I just really wanted to switch careers.
Yeah.
And do this. But I had a young family. I had 2 young children, and I was the breadwinner. My wife was basically, my wife's a lawyer. She's an attorney. She could certainly make a good living, but she wanted to be home with her kids. So she would work some part-time things here and there, but I was the one that was supporting the family. So how the heck was I going to do that? I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to do that. And for me, this has been true in my life. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but somehow when there's something I'm supposed to be doing, something shows up to make that possible. The universe just kind of presents something. Now I have to receive it. I have to do it. I have to interact with it.
Yes.
That's up to me, but it does show up. So something showed up, was an opportunity to create a mail order product. Now, I was in advertising, and I was in actually the direct response division of a big ad agency. And so I understood promotion and how to do that. And then something happened. It's a long story, but something happened where I play guitar. I'm a creative person. I play guitar as a hobby, right? I'm not a professional musician. And a friend of mine who I knew from advertising, who was a art director. I was the art director. He was a photographer, and I used to hire him for photography things, but he was also into natural health. He was a runner, and so he used to teach us things, and we became fast friends. And he had this idea. This was before I left my job, before all this happened. He had this idea of he brought his son. He lived in New York City. I lived in the suburbs of New York in Westchester. And he brought his son over when his son was 3 and my son was 2, just to get away from the city. And I took my guitar out to play for them. 2 boys. Well, they got distracted in about 30 seconds. Not a long attention span. The idea popped in my mind to insert their name in the song, the children's song we were singing. So it was about them. Now they're really interested.
Of course.
So we did that all afternoon. I just inserted their name in children's songs. And then we all had a lot of fun. But I didn't think anything of it. But my friend, when he was driving home, he thought about it. He's kind of an entrepreneurial guy. I remember he was a photographer, had his own business. And he said, Michael, I have an idea. Why don't you write songs for kids using their name in it, personalized songs?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, first of all, I've never written a song, so I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah.
But if I can, let me try it, So I did. I found it actually came easy to me. And so anyway, I wrote these songs. I started to write some songs. But then he was said, well, why don't you can just produce them in your basement or something like that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. If we're going to put out a product, it has to really be good. I'm just showing you the synergy of what happened, right?
Yes.
Right. So that I would pick up the guitar and do that my friend would say that, right? It wasn't my idea. It wasn't coming from my brain. And then, but I happened to have met somebody about a year before that who was a professional musician, a jingle writer, who was into the natural health field because he started to lose his hearing and he became a macrobiotic and he taught macrobiotic cooking. And so we would go to his seminars and we became friends. So I called him up and I said, hey, I have this idea. I've written these songs. Do you know anybody who'll produce them for me?
Oh, so beautiful. Okay.
Right. He says, actually, I do. It used to be someone I used to write jingles with who happened to live in Westchester, where I live, who had just started her own studio in her house, and she's looking for business. And think of the synergy of this craziness.
Yeah.
So I call her up, and I talk to her, and I say, well, I don't really have a lot of money. I can't, really pay you probably what you're worth and so on, but I have a project that I'm doing. And I'm happy if you want to jump in, I'll give you a percentage of it. And so she says, well, sure, because I need to keep myself busy and I'm just starting out. And I said, I'm not a professional musician. I'm not a professional singer. So we have to get some people. So I know people. So I said, so I'll pay your out-of-pocket expenses for these singers and whatever you need to do, and I'll give you a percentage of the thing. So we did this, produced this little album, 5 songs. My friend went out and promoted it, right, to stores and whatever. And anyway, that went on for a year or so. He was moderately successful, but I didn't leave my job. I'm not leaving my job on a prayer that might be successful. Well, as it turned out, we had kind of a falling out as business partners. I mean, friends and business partners are different things. And so he went off with that album, and I decided to write another album for myself. And I worked out an arrangement with him where I just got a percentage of whatever he did also. And I just went off on my own. But in the meantime, remember, I was in direct mail. So I had worked with my friends at the agency, a copywriter friend who I worked with and an account executive friend. And I told them about my project, what I did. And I said, do you think we could sell this in mail order? Not in stores, because I know nothing about selling in stores, but I do know about mail order. They said, sure. So they helped me. We put together something and we tested it and it was successful. So
Nice.
I then approached somebody else who I knew from making radio commercials. And I wrote a group of new songs. This was actually a better producer, a more advanced producer. And I approached him with the same idea. I have these songs, I'll pay out of your out-of-pocket expenses, but I'll give you a percentage. And he said, there was just something about the way you said it. I get approached like this all the time and I always say no, but there was just something about the way you said it that I agreed to it.
Okay.
He did a fabulous job of writing. He had different singers, whatever. And we produced an album. It was called Magical Journeys. And I began to promote it with this campaign I did. And it was successful. In fact, it was so successful that I couldn't do both things at the same time. And that's when I became interested in this healing school. So that was my ticket to leaving my job, which I did. Mail order company supported enough money. Actually, I made more money with the mail order company over time than I would have in advertising. And it allowed me the time to study this.
Yeah. So you still have that curiosity, even though, I mean, despite the business that this music journey gave you, deep inside of you, actually, you still have kind of, I still want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. And so when go on, sorry.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No,
that was the beginning of my journey. That was the beginning of my real spiritual journey. I had been meditating. I had been curious and interested. It was a sideline I did. That was a commitment to make this more than just a sideline. Yeah. And Barbara Brennan, when I studied with her, she was amazing, an amazing energy. And she inspired me to want to really dig deep and really know who I am as a spiritual being. So that was my first, real mentor.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm just curious to go back to when you're already studying in the school, right? Has that the only point where you realize that, oh, now it makes sense why everything happens that way? It's because I'm really meant to come here to this school, because you mentioned earlier that, you have this synergy, the energy comes to you when something is your calling.
Right.
So,
well, I don't know when I put that together, but I did see, I can give you 10 other synergies like that, that was pre that, so it's almost like spirit or higher consciousness that's watching over all of us. And the ones that are watching over me are kind of putting these breadcrumbs out, and they're setting up things for me to notice to guide me in a certain direction. Now I have to pay attention and see them and act from them, right? Which I did. So I'll take credit for that. But I didn't put the seed. These are other people that came to me and gave me ideas and stuff. They just seeded it to me. So my whole, even meditation wasn't my idea at first. I'm just telling you, if you want to hear the backstory, even, I don't know how much time you want to spend.
Yeah, we have a very limited time, so we're going to cover that.
But anyway, there are other synergies that the synergies that led up to me meditating in the first place. There were synergies that led up, to showing me different things, right? That led up to, the story I told you. So, but that was what I told you was that really changed the direction of my life.
My next question is that the spiritual discovery. I think we are, I don't know if you know the dimension, I think you mentioned that. And I think a lot of people starting, I believe, to put more attention about spiritual work. Now, I want to hear from you. Why do you think it's vital to do the spiritual discovery, especially in our very, very destructive world?
Well, I think my point of view is that everybody's on an evolutionary path.
Yes.
Including the world. The world is on an evolutionary path. And I think the world is a living being. You know, sometimes they call it Gaia, right? But it's actually has a consciousness. So think of yourself. You have trillions of cells in your body that make up your body, right? Each cell has its own life and its own brain, its own way of doing things, but it's part of a bigger you. It's part of a whole you. Well, you're bigger than that too, but I mean, your body, you think of it, this is me. You don't think of, I have, you know, several trillion others working for me, right? So the earth is like that too. So the earth is a being that has trillions of cells. We're one of the cells.
Wow. Okay.
Of the earth.
It's huge. Yeah.
Right. So, so physically, we're part of the earth. And mentally and emotionally, we're also part of the consciousness of the planet. So the planet has a consciousness and it's evolving. Right. And we're part of that evolutionary process. So the world is moving through, in order for the world to shift, there has to be a shift in consciousness. And I think I was talking to you a little bit about this when we were chatting before.
Before.
Before our interview. That in my mind, it's very simple. That the consciousness, the dominant consciousness on the planet is a me consciousness. Me first, right? Okay. In my country, we had a president, last president, who said, America first. So me first could be me personally first. Me first could be my family first. Me first could be my country first. Me first could be my religion first. But it's me against something else. Separation, energy of separation. Whether it's a small or a bigger group, but it's still the energy of separation. And that is what's tearing the planet apart, is the energy of separation. And the idea that we're separate units. So think of it this way. In your physical body, that trillion-celled body, right? When there's a rogue cell who's not working for the good of the body, right? You know what we call that cell? Cancer.
Oh, I'm about to say that.
That's what we call that cell. Cancer is a cell that's not following the program. And it's writing its own program. And it's trying to just eat and do whatever for it to stay alive. And that's how it thinks. Somehow it lost the programming. And it's destroying the body.
Yeah.
And it's doing that so that it can survive. The joke is that if it does its job, then the body dies and it dies too, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't see that. So that's what we're doing in our world today. Through separation, instead of seeing that we're all interconnected as a whole and that we need to work together. What's in your best interest is in my best interest. What's in this country's best interest is in the United States' best interest. What's in nature's best interest is in my best interest, because I'm a part of nature. So we're the level of consciousness of interconnection is not strong enough in our world, in the collective consciousness. Yes. Spirituality is that revelation, is that understanding that we're all interconnected. And when you're in touch with your higher self or your soul, that is how that part of you thinks. It's very different than the lower mind, or the ego, what I call the lower mind. the ego. So most people, we're encouraged in our culture, we're encouraged in our schools, we're encouraged in our families to think separation for the most part.
Yeah.
With a few exceptions. We're not taught to think community. We're not taught to think interconnectedness on a global scale. If there was a shift in conscious, if I could flick a switch and shift everybody's consciousness on the planet to that consciousness, we would solve the problem so fast.
For sure. That's the ideal picture, isn't it?
That's the ideal picture. So, and I believe we're heading that way.
I believe so too.
I mean, hopefully we don't destroy ourselves before then. We won't destroy the earth, but we'll might destroy humankind. Mm-hmm. Humankind, there's been many extinctions throughout our history.
Yeah.
Right? So, this could be another one. I don't know. But that's kind of the way I look at it. So spirituality, so from a global perspective, with the trouble we're having in the world, mm-hmm. that would really solve that problem. Mm. There's another thing going on with spirituality. So yes, we're part of this greater whole, but we're also our own unique essence. And we're evolving. And this is just one little lifetime. Mm-hmm. I think I do past life regressions with people. I've done hundreds of them. I've seen probably hundreds of my own. Mm-hmm. So the higher self of the soul puts out a piece of itself to have an experience, an incarnation. We live 60 years, 80 years, if you're fortunate, 90 years. But to your soul, that's like one day in the life of your soul. It's not a big deal. It's just, that's what happened. And we come here to evolve, to learn, and to contribute. And to to express our unique gifts in the world. Yes. So when I heard my calling, that was really my calling telling me, you need to move in this direction in order to express your unique gifts. Advertising is not going to do it for you. Advertising could express unique gifts for somebody, but it wasn't for me. Yes. Even though I was good at it and, was thought of well and made a good salary and was even a vice president at the agency, it didn't matter. It wasn't my gift. And I knew it on some level. But it might be somebody, you could do that. I'm not putting that down. That could be your gift. It could be your form of expressing your unique gift in the world, right? So, but it wasn't for me. Yes. So, but once we die, quote unquote, die, we don't die. Your consciousness doesn't die. So once you leave your body, your physical body behind, you go on a journey and it's part of your evolution. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of the bigger picture, the way I look at it. So we're learning to discover who we truly are. True. And then use that for the highest and best of all concerned. So spirituality, so when I teach spirituality, when I do the work I do, I'm looking to help speed up that journey for somebody. Yes. And if they pick me or relate to me, then I'm some piece in that puzzle for them to help them along that journey to awaken, meaning to let go of identifying with that smaller us, the ego self. Yes, the ego. and begin to identify with the higher self. And once you begin to identify with the higher self, you look at life completely differently. And life becomes a different adventure. And the lower self comes along for the ride. We're not dismissing the lower self, but it shouldn't be in charge. It doesn't do a good job when it's in charge. And it's not supposed to be in charge. But the world hasn't evolved enough for us to know that at a young age, right? To be taught that. But it will eventually. Yeah, so. I think you mentioned a pretty deep
for many people might not understand like what is the discovery, and we're talking about beyond this, you know, beyond this. And you can feel that when you're really discovering outside the world. I don't know the right term, but because I'm also a true believer in practicing spirituality, because I've experienced myself that logical or even thinking is not enough really to understand the essence of life, that you have to combine everything, you know, that includes the spirituality. And so my next question to you is that you mentioned about shifting, right, to higher consciousness. And
Yes.
I'm really curious for you to share with us, how can we understand on shifting to higher consciousness? What will be your like explanation on every individual? Because we are dealing in a different path in our life. Some people might be stubborn, right? That the universe, God, whomever we call it, giving them the signs, but they know within themselves that there is a place to shift to a higher consciousness. So how can we more understand that, if you can share with us?
I'll try. So I think built into everybody is that connection. So we use different words for it though.
Yeah.
And it's your kind of your intuition. And people really know the difference between what feels right and what feels wrong, or correct or incorrect. I don't like to use the word right, wrong, but correct or incorrect. So when you go into a situation or you're interacting with somebody, you kind of have an inner compass which tells you, is this in sync? Is this in alignment? Does this feel right? Or does this feel incorrect for me? And that's that intuitional higher self part of you whispering in your ear, so to speak, of what feels right and wrong. People feel it in their bodies often. You know, if they get tense or they're not in their stomach, you know, they call it a gut feeling about something.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of that communication. But the higher self doesn't talk through the gut so much, it talks through the heart part of us. So it's a slightly different experience, but we start there.
Yeah.
And everybody has that entry point. I've never met anybody that doesn't. Now, whether you listen to that or not is a free will choice.
Yes.
So if you think of, I think of myself growing up, how many times did I not listen to that voice? So every time you don't listen to that voice, the voice gets a little quieter, you know, it's a little harder to hear it.
Yeah.
Because energy follows thought. Whatever you think about becomes stronger. I mean, whatever you ruminate on becomes bigger. I mean, everybody can relate to that. So we, as beings, we have to make a choice where you're going to focus on. Every moment of the day, what are you focusing on? But there's so many automatic things that we built into ourselves that put us off the track of our quote unquote higher self or intuition parts. So that's why I got into doing hypnotherapy with people. I call myself a transformational hypnotherapist because it's those autopilot things in the subconscious, unconscious mind that we built. We forgot we did it, but we did. And it keeps pulling us in a direction that doesn't serve us. How do you dismantle that? So a lot of my work when I'm working with somebody is dismantling that so that you can hear that voice better and you can begin to follow that guidance. So in a way, we're our own worst enemy in that we built patterns, you know, and we forgot we did that and we don't even consider that there's something else. Right? Until maybe you meet somebody and they're acting differently, whatever, you say, wait a minute, what is that?
And
Just
that
like I met that voice in my head who showed me something completely different. And I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? I never even considered that was even possible.
Yes.
But it changed my life to have that experience. So we do that for ourselves because we're interconnected.
Yes.
So put yourself in situations that encourage that feeling of opening, whatever that is for you. Hang around people that do that. Study with teachers that do that for you. But you have to feel it inside. It has to resonate. It could be a fantastic teacher, but not a good teacher for you.
Exactly. I believe in that. It has to connect. I do that. I practice that whenever I'm in the position of looking for some teachers or mentors or coaches. I've got to listen to that heart and also the intuition that's telling me. And you pointed it right that you could be the most amazing, but we just don't resonate. And this is why I love it. The paradox of that, we always want to compete, but you can't really compete because we have a dedicated gift. I always say this in every interview I have or every conversation I have with anybody, that don't compete to other people. They have their own gifts and you have your own gifts. Just work on that, because your gifts will be dedicated for some community, but also it's in oneness. So you collaborate, if we can say that, in projects, right? But and you mentioned that we are in evolution right now. So we are conditioned in separation, right? And this is why I'm so passionate to express my message to everyone, that it's not competition. We are here to help one another. I mean, I can't live here by myself to express my journey or story. I have to have that people, like what happened to you, right? The synergy that people would help you to bring you there.
That's
so
true.
I mean, of course you have your own work to do, but at the same time, some people will help you to get there.
Yes, I would agree with that. And the higher self, like I have a list of like 40 soul qualities that I give to my clients, because when you're expressing that, it brings you closer to that part of you and has a different feel. The higher self or the soul never thinks competition. If you're thinking competition, you're in your lower mind. Period. Because the higher self doesn't think that way. But we're so trained to think that way on so many levels. So you have to be observant. You have to teach yourself. One of the spiritual classes that I teach, it's a 4-weekend class that me and a friend of mine from my spiritual school teaches. And it's all about how to discover those parts of yourself and the hidden ego parts in the lower mind. And when you're operating from that, how to shift that, how to get introduced to this other part, how to begin to bring that into your life. And so over those 4 weekends, you can make that transformation, to get there. And I just, love that idea.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually have question for that, because I think you would agree that not a lot of people are open, like 100%. Okay, let me sign up for that. So my next question to you is that, what are your suggestions, tiny steps to opening those people who have already built strong lower mind or the ego, that they don't see the benefit, they don't see the alignment to shift to a higher consciousness? So what are your tiny suggestions for those people to really starting to build that spiritual connection? Because you and I, we do believe, I don't think anyone can actually disagree, that somehow, somewhere, we can feel that, like the intuition, the heart feeling. But I think to slowly soften that ego, and allow the spiritual to come out to you, what are your tiny steps to suggest to all those people that would like to help themselves, but slowly?
Right. Well, I like slowly. I think slowly is good.
Yes.
So I have a I have a certificate in positive psychology. It's part of
Nice.
my training. They discovered that real permanent changes only happen usually when you make small little changes over time. So small changes are actually favorable. And what I mean is if you wanted to do something different, ask yourself, how could I do it 2% better this month for the next 30 days? Not
Yeah.
20% better, not 50% better, 2%
And
better.
I think we all know the percentage, but could you help us, Michael, give us some details? Like, what are those point of actions? What we can do? Because I think a lot of people can always look into this information, like the percentage and so on, 1%. But what those 1% that we can do? I think I want you to
Well,
tackle,
so
really share
I'll
the
give you some
juicy
examples.
information.
I'll give you some examples. But it's it's unique to that person. It has to do with their life. So I was working with a client the other day, and I like to do a lot of regression therapy, where you go back and see how you put something together, so you put it together a different way. So we did that, and one of the things that she discovered was that she doesn't speak up for herself to get her needs met. So and it had to do with what happened when she was growing up, and the kind of stress that she was under and the way her parents were, and she had the impression that she wasn't important. Her sister was important, she wasn't important. Her mother would give attention to her sister, not to her. So she created this story in her
Yes.
mind that she wasn't important.
Yeah.
So my challenge to her was, well, think about how you can live your life differently this month. You could begin to honor your needs and speak up about it 2% better. Come up with some small way that you're going to do that. And then I would say, after she does that, then I would say, okay, now this month, how can you now do it another 2% better? And slowly she begins to do that. Now, of course, we're working together. She can tell me I tried doing that, but here's where my obstacles, or here's what stopped me. Great, that's good to know, because now let's work with that. You're showing me and yourself what you need to work on to get to that goal about speaking up for yourself, because that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an example of making a small, little change to help yourself do that. I mentioned that we all have this intuition that tells us this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing to do. So how can you follow your intuition 2% better this month? Really listen to it a little better.
Yeah.
And it could come in so many ways.
Yeah. I think in my experience, because I grew up as a people pleaser. So I think late 30s, that's how I discovered that, not discovered, but really owning me being different, me being, I love to speak the truth. So I think for the purpose of giving a example to people, just to have an understanding, like 2% or 1% of action to really connect your spiritual level or awareness, is that in my experience, what I did is when I know that something is not right, there are a few things that actually our lives will tell us signs. For example, I've been sick, and then I've been feeling exhausted, and then I get so easily influenced by toxic information and all of that, and then I get very sensitive. And so now it might not be workable for a lot of people, because I love to take a big jump of action, because that's just me. But for other people, like in that position, if they want to really connect to their higher self, would be, I think it's giving ourself love. You know, we are so hard to ourselves
Mm.
that we pressuring so much that we have to achieve this, we have to have this, we have, especially for women. Oh, you got to get married, you have to have kids, and so on and so forth. So I felt like that's not working for me. Maybe it's working for other people. I know some people that live to be an incredible mother, great, you know, but that's not for me. Exactly what you said, that didn't work for you in advertising. And for me, I told myself, I finally embrace, like, okay, I'm different. I don't want to be pressured by the society of having achievement, those things. So I speak gentle, I speak love, I speak empathy, I speak compassionate with myself. And I think it's not easy, right? Like we feel like we don't deserve it. We feel guilty. Why do we have to start first within us? But I think for those people that require some small change or small action, really start to love ourselves first. Like communicate positive words, positive communication, and start from there. Eventually, we will feel the changes. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And then, and you follow your intuition. So if your intuition says, well, for me to be successful, I have to go cold turkey here and do this, you
Yeah.
try it out and you see how it does. And if you need to adapt that or change that, then you do. Right. So
Yeah.
everybody has their own way. But we know statistically that that kind of method of slow changes,
Yes.
we call like a 30-day challenge to make a small change, is successful for a lot of people. Because we have pressure to make a big change, and we have a lot of negative self-judgments.
Yeah.
That says, well, I need to be wherever, right? And that can happen in every walk of life. I mean, even in the spiritual field,
Yes.
people put a lot of pressure on themselves. Oh, I want to have that experience, or they heard me have an experience. Well, I have to have that experience. No, you don't have to have that experience. That's just what happened to me, right? Just pay attention to the experiences that come to you, but honor the ones. So I would say it's so simple that I'll give you an example. So one of my favorite authors is Bruce Lipton.
Yeah.
He's a biologist.
I know. I think
You
I've
know of
read.
him? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
so he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. Biology of Belief. But he was a geneticist, and he studied single cell organisms. But what he says, if you take a single cell organism and put it in a petri dish, and you put a poison next to it, it moves away from it. Somehow it knows to move away from it. But if you put something that's good for it, a food that's good for it, it moves towards it. Single cell organism. We have trillions of single cell organisms in us, right? So I think the same is true of us. If your inclination is to move away from it, your intuition tells you that that's a poison for you. If your inclination is to embrace it and move to it, no matter what anybody else says, then some part of you knows that's a food for you.
Yeah.
Everybody can do that.
I agree. It's I think that particular thing or statement that you mentioned, that's a completely deep conversation that we could have, because I have so many things to share on that level too. But one thing that I can share to everyone's watching or listening right now is that for as long as you're living, you have a hope. Don't be so hard to yourself. And really, like when you feel like you're lost, you feel like you have all of these keep calming anxiety or depression, one of the things I've learned is that don't 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 hesitate or don't feel embarrassed to seek for help, because there are so many people out there really willing to help you. Just, I think there's a again, the lower mind, right? The lower mind that causing people to seek for help, to knock, to voice out. So I'm sharing this with you, and I'm sure Michael is agreeing with that. That, you know, if you resonate with this conversation we're having, obviously you can reach out to Michael later on. He will share with you where to reach and all of this program that he is having. But before I proceed with that, Michael, I know the kind of work you have is very, how to say, it can be also overwhelming, because you're taking a lot of energy from your clients, right? From your, I don't know how you
Overwhelming
call
to me? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Because I've experienced that. I've heard so many healers, spiritual healers, they felt too strong of listening to the story, that they felt being involved, right? So if you're saying that never experience overwhelm with the story. So, but if in case that it happened to you and you're able to already battle proof yourself to separate being a spiritual and also a transformational hypnotherapist, my question is that your job is very crucial and at the same time very needed. But how do you keep yourself optimistic that you can share your energy every time you have a client?
Because I always work on myself.
Mm.
And I do the practices to enhance me.
Mm.
So I meditate every day, usually in the evening also, right? Because that is an evergreen source of life force and vitality and discovery. And I can't even begin to tell you all the amazing things that is right there in front of us. There's no secrets. It's all in front of us. We're the ones that block it out. You know, the sun shines on everybody.
It's true.
You have to decide if you're going to get out of the shade or not, you know, if you're going to take it in. And so self-care is really important to me. Yes. I make sure I take care of myself. I don't see too many, you know, I don't overdo it. I don't see too many people. And I do the practices that do it. The other thing I think is really important to help for homeostasis is you got to find groups of people that you interact with on a regular basis that are into the same passions that you are.
Yeah.
So I've been in the spiritual school. So I didn't, when I did the energy healing school, after I got out of that, I felt like I needed more. And I ended up studying hypnotherapy and actually liked that the best. And I followed the hypnotherapy school, and the teacher in that hypnotherapy school, one of the teachers, was really spiritually developed, and she started a spiritual school. So that's what I've been part of since 2006. We meet every year. But we break up, so we get this big manual, what we're learning, but then we have to practice it all year long. And we break up into small groups. So I have these two other people, we talk every week. We get on the phone together. They don't live local to me, but we get on the phone together and we meditate together, or we read the manual, or we read a book and discuss it. But these are people that are on the same level of spirituality and thinking about the same things I am. These are not things I could talk with everybody, but it enhances me to have that place. That's why I offer a free Zoom meditation, because it's a group where people could come together with a common interest, and we can support each other. So I think that's really crucial to keeping yourself positive and uplifted. So your own personal work and your own personal practices that uplift you, whatever they are, whether it's taking a walk in nature, whether it's doing yoga, whether it's meditating, and hanging out with people enough, doesn't have to be all the time, but you need to have a continuity of that in your life, where you uplift each other. Just like when I found these other two people that got messages, well, we all got incredibly uplifted. We did that for years. It was so uplifting to do that. And I wasn't just me alone getting messages somewhere. I was in a group where we were all doing the same thing and we could support each other. And my experience grew tenfold because of that. So I think that's a really important component for one's self-care, is not just to do whatever practices you should do, but also to find groups of like-minded people that are on your wavelength. Not that you're better or worse than somebody else, but that you can open up in a different way when you're around that. You're not guarded. You don't have to worry. People are going to understand because they're on the same journey in their own unique way, and you can learn from each other, you know? So that's kind of the way I do it. Now, I'm sensitive and psychic, and I can pick up on what's going on for you, but I don't take it on.
That's great.
Because so I'm just not an empath in that way. Now, I don't think I ever was. So
I think it took you a lot of work, though, right? To really kind of.
I just don't think that's my nature.
Okay, because I know
somebody else. I know people come to me who have that problem, but that stems from a misimpression. That stems from something that happened to them.
Okay.
I do a womb regression with people. Believe it or not, you're responding in the womb. So I've seen people when they go back to the womb before they were born. It's not that uncommon that I hear, "Oh, my mom's in distress. I need to help her." Right? So they feel their mom's distress. They take it on, and their feeling is, "I got to rescue her in some way." And then their whole life, they're a rescuer.
Yeah.
Rescuing is a codependent position, not a good position to be in.
No.
Helping people rescuing them is not helping them. Helping people is helping them help themselves.
Yes.
Not rescuing them. So, but that started even before they were born. So that's why I love to help people look at patterns, because we put together patterns, and that's why things are happening. Patterns in this lifetime, patterns in other lifetimes. And you can master all of that. You have choice. If you make things aware, you have choice. But so many things are on autopilot that, when I work with somebody, I want to make the things that help you evolve be the things that are on autopilot now, not those other things. That's kind of the work. And that's what I like to do. And I do it with myself. And so the only time I would get overwhelmed is if something happened in a session that triggered me, that bothered me. But that's not about them. That's about me. So if that happens, then I make sure I do something to transform that in myself.
Yeah.
Doing some of the processes that I teach, doing it on myself, or if it's beyond me, because sometimes we blindside ourselves and we need help, like you were saying, I totally agree with that. I'll pick up the phone and I'll call my spiritual friend and I'll say, "I need a session. When are you available? I need some support here. I can't get to it on my own."
Yeah.
And so we do that for each other.
Yeah. Right? I love you mentioned many times the power of making a choice. And also I think whatever you have shared, there's a component that requires intention.
Yes.
Right? So you've got to be really intentional with what you want to achieve, because without that, everything will be given to you. Everything, because you're not so intentional. What do you exactly want? So the power of choice.
I agree. So there's another author who I really like who talks about that a lot. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Okay, yep, I know him.
And he talks a lot about intention and about creating a clear vision for where you want to be. You don't need to be there yet.
No.
But you want to be there in your mind. And then the universe built itself around that. And it's, I like science too. And so I've studied quantum physics, which Joe Dispenza talks about. And in the quantum physics world, everything's interconnected.
Yes.
Right? And everything builds itself around what we're projecting. Mm-hmm. The thing is, we project a lot of things unconsciously, and we don't realize we're doing that. Mm. That's why I like the hypnotherapy. I want you to make you aware of what you're projecting so you can make a new choice. It's hard to make a choice if you're not aware of what you're doing.
Exactly.
So I like to bring awareness to it for you, help you bring awareness to it, and encourage you through questioning and processing to make new choices. And once you make new choices and build that new pathway, it begins to become your autopilot. Yeah, and then it's working for you, not against you.
Love it. And that's actually kind of came into my mind. Oh, okay. Another episode that I will have more with Michael about hypnotherapists, because I'm sure a lot of people very, very curious. How does it work? I mean, it exists, but there's still a lot of people like, so I'm pretty sure that it will be very exciting and interesting and valuable too, once we tackle that about hypnotherapy work. So
yeah, I would love to do that, but I want to leave your audience with a piece of hope.
Oh, share, please.
All right. So this is a true thing, okay. and it relates to quantum physics. There was a study done, and this is called the 100 monkey syndrome. So I don't know if you've ever heard about that, the 100 monkey syndrome. So there were people that were anthropologists, or they were studying the behaviors of monkeys on these islands. So there was a group of maybe 10 or 20 islands that were apart from each other. They weren't even in visual sight of each other. And they were studying monkey behavior on those islands. And on one island, one of the monkeys discovered a better way of getting food, better way of taking the fruit and extracting the pit, or it was something, I don't remember the detail, but it was a better way of doing it. More successful, quicker, faster, whatever. So the other monkeys on that island began to observe that, and then some of them began to do that also. And after a while, more and more monkeys on that island exhibited this new behavior. But the magical thing is that the monkeys on all the other islands began doing that also, but they had no contact with that island. They couldn't see it. They had no contact. But at some point, when there were enough monkeys on that island doing the new behavior, all the monkeys on those islands began doing the new behavior. How did that happen?
I'm going to guess. Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because of what you mentioned earlier about the connection with the earth, the cells. So I'm thinking that maybe the reason why, even though they're not connected anywhere, but the cells that we are touching with, the earth connection, somehow that send the message. What do you say?
Oh, I love that. I never thought of that, but that sounds like a good answer. But in a bigger level, we're all interconnected energetically. So when there's enough energy in a certain direction, it causes a transformation of consciousness for those other monkeys. What percentage does that need to be, right? Well, that's a little bit of an unknown. I've heard different numbers, but it ranges anywhere from 1 to 10%. So you talk about why is spirituality important? Well, if 1 to 10% of humanity begins to shift in that way, 100% of humanity will shift in that way. Of course, we're all interconnected. We just need to get enough energy on it to cause that transformation of consciousness. So not everybody has to change. Only 1 to 10% have to change to make that change. So I'm doing my part. I'm making the change for me. I'm teaching others to make that change. You're teaching others to make that change. If there's enough of us doing that, at some point, there'll be a quantum lift in consciousness on the planet. So that's my message of hope.
I love it. I love it. That's a wonderful message to share at the end of our conversation. That also, like what you said, it's a hopeful message. I love it. So for everyone out there watching or listening who would like to experience your meditation and also to understand more of the programs or anything with spirituality or even with transformation hypnotherapy, where they can find you.
So the best way to find me is just on my website, which is www.alternativechoices.org. It's not .com, it's .org. So alternativechoices.org. There's a contact form there. My phone number's there. And I always think it's important to talk to somebody before they do anything with me.
Yes.
So I offer a free 20-minute phone consult just to discuss what you're looking to achieve. And I can ask some questions and I can share with you how I might approach that. And we can see if we're a good fit for each other. Yes. And also, you can contact me. I'm happy to send you the Zoom link, anybody, to join our meditation group.
Nice.
I have it once a week right now. And it's a spiritual meditation. So that's the focus. And it's about connecting with the higher self. It's a simple, it's a visualization, it's a guided meditation, and there's some silence there too. And it's to have an experience. I'm big on having an experience. Anytime I work with somebody, I'm working on having an experience, having them have an experience. And so that's what that does. And then, you can see my classes and, things that I do. I'm happy for you to join if you resonate with it. The work that I do works, it's good stuff, but it might not be good for you. Yes. I don't know. You have to determine after we talk or looking at the website, if it intrigues you, if there's something gets stirred in you, does that feel like the right thing for you to learn more? Then that's great. And if it doesn't, that's
okay too.
That's okay too. Then I'm just not the right person for you at this time. Go keep searching, find the right person. But when you do, then be sincere and let them help you help yourself. That's all they can do is help you help yourself.
Love it. Love it. And that's once again, www.alternativechoices.org. And I'm going to put that as well on the blog and also on the podcast. I do really love this conversation with you, Michael. It's fantastic. Obviously, it's a lot of exchange stories and understanding, and obviously I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people also learn a lot of things, and especially when what you give, the hopeful message. And I'm just going to reiterate that we are here interconnected, helping one another. One of the biggest gifts that you can give to yourself is that when you know that you can't deal the challenges that you're facing, ask someone. If that person unable to help you, ask the professional, right? But never belittle yourself that you have no hope, because Michael and I, we can guarantee you that you deserve to live here. Just lower the lower mind and let the spiritual life to enlighten you, because you deserve to have a free and calm, optimistic, and really empowering your life. So really appreciate.
I love that. I appreciate it. And when you feel those feelings like you're less than, that is just your ego talking. Your higher self does not think that.
Yeah. So thank you, Michael. And for everyone who feels resonated, once again, don't hesitate to reach out to Michael. Sure. And feel free to forward or to share this episode of us with Michael. The more, the merrier, the more that we can reach out and help and support other people as well. And of course, the Empower Your Life show will grow, so we can bring more amazing people to really help us empower our lives to whatever life or the life that we deserve. Okay. So Keep
One
up.
other little thing I just remembering now in terms of people reaching me and stuff. I actually have a podcast also, and the podcast is called Path to Enlightenment.
There you
That's
go.
the name of the podcast. And I have a lot of episodes that talk about spirituality, my point of view about it. So, so that's another way to kind of get a sense of that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love it.
You
So
can get it on, most podcasts, that are around, Spotify or.
Yes. So Path to Enlightenment. Once again.
Path to Enlightenment is a podcast.
Love it. Love it. So thank you so much. Thank
All
you
right.
everyone for watching and listening. And keep up the great work. Take that tiny steps that you have learned from this episode. We will be very happy to share or to listen or to read your comments, whatever that insights, whatever experience that you had with our conversation. We'll be more than happy to respond back to you. In the meantime, we wish you a wonderful and productive day. Keep up the great work. Slowly but surely, you're going to transform to the life that you deserve. So thank you. We see you next time. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy that interview and I hope you find it inspiring and motivating. Remember, stay optimistic and keep taking action slowly but surely for your big dreams. Thank you once again, and I'll see you on the next episode here at Empower Your Life.